The screaming didn't start until Officer Brenner kicked the birthday banner into the mud. Marissa Caldwell had done everything right: valid permit, legal setup, her daughter's 8th birthday at Lake Merritt Park in Oakland. But when 3 police cruisers rolled up silent and deliberate, Brenner didn't ask questions. He gave orders. Then he started destroying everything. Jayla clutched her cake box, trembling, while her mother's party collapsed around her. That's when Marissa made one phone call, not to 911, to her brother, Torrance. And the second Brenner saw him, everything changed. Because 4 years earlier, Torrance had filed a sealed federal report that flagged Brenner permanently, an invisible tripwire. The system had been watching the entire time. When Brenner grabbed Marissa's arm in front of 30 witnesses, he crossed a line he didn't know existed. What happened next didn't just end his career, it exposed a system designed to catch officers who thought they were untouchable. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe, because this story proves that sometimes one phone call changes everything. Marissa Caldwell's hands trembled as she tied the last purple balloon to the picnic table, though she'd tell anyone who asked that it was just the wind coming off Lake Merritt. It wasn't. Oakland's May air hung warm and still that Saturday morning, the kind of California sunshine that made promises feel possible. Jayla's 8th birthday. A simple party. Cupcakes with buttercream frosting. A banner Marissa had hand-painted because the store-bought ones felt too impersonal for the daughter who still believed her mother could fix anything. But Marissa knew better than to trust easy moments. She'd chosen Lake Merritt Park deliberately open, public, visible. Somewhere she wouldn't have to second-guess the locked doors or wonder about the neighbors. Somewhere Jayla's laughter could echo across the water without Marissa's chest tightening with the old, familiar dread that safety was just another thing black mothers weren't allowed to take for granted. Still, watching Jayla chase her cousin Amari around the donated folding chairs, shrieking with the kind of joy only 8-year-old girls possess, Marissa let herself smile. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe she was allowed to hope. Her best friend, Keisha, nudged her shoulder while arranging paper plates. "Girl, you did good. Look at her face." Marissa looked. Jayla's grin stretched so wide it made her asthma inhaler, tucked safely in Marissa's back pocket, feel like a distant worry. The purple streamers caught the breeze. The cake vanilla with raspberry filling, Jayla's favorite, sat perfect and untouched in its box, waiting for the candles. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. That's when the feeling crept in. The one Marissa had carried since she was 15, standing outside a Prince George's County mall in Maryland, while a security guard's hand left bruises on her arm, and no one believed her story. The feeling that whispered peace was always temporary for women who looked like her. That joy was something she borrowed, never owned. She shook it off, forced herself to breathe, told herself she was being paranoid, overprotective, seeing shadows that didn't exist. Jayla ran over, breathless. "Mama, can we sing the song now?" "Not yet, baby. We're waiting on a few more people. But I'm ready now." Marissa kissed her forehead, tasting the coconut oil she'd used that morning to twist Jayla's hair into 2 perfect puffs. Patience, love, good things come to those who wait. She believed that once. 20 minutes later, 3 police cruisers rolled into the parking lot silent, deliberate, no lights, no sirens. And Marissa's smile died before the engines did. The cruisers didn't announce themselves. That's what Marissa would remember later, how deliberately quiet they were. No sirens wailing, no lights spinning red and blue across the park's open grass. Just 3 Oakland PD vehicles gliding into the lot like sharks circling something already wounded. Keisha noticed first. Her hand froze mid-reach for a juice box. "Rissa, why are they here?" Marissa's stomach dropped. She turned slowly, hoping, praying the cars were passing through, headed somewhere else, responding to something that had nothing to do with her daughter's birthday party. But they weren't passing through. They parked in a triangle formation, blocking the nearest exit. Tactical, intentional. The parents noticed. Conversations faltered. Uncle Derek, who'd been setting up the speaker for music, straightened and crossed his arms. Keisha's husband, Julian, pulled out his phone not to record yet, just to hold, just in case. Marissa's pulse hammered in her ears. Jayla tugged her sleeve. "Mama, who are those people?" Just go play with Amari, baby. Stay close to the table." "But—" "Jayla, please." The little girl's face crumpled slightly, confused by the edge in her mother's voice. She backed toward the cupcakes, clutching the stuffed bunny she'd brought from home. The cruiser doors opened in unison. 3 officers stepped out. 2 men, 1 woman, all white. All wearing expressions that sat somewhere between bored and annoyed, like they'd been pulled away from something more important. The tallest one led, buzz-cut, squared jaw, sunglasses even though the sun wasn't in his eyes. His nameplate read Brenner. He surveyed the party like he was cataloging evidence. Not guests, not children, not balloons. Evidence. Marissa's breath caught. She recognized that look. She'd seen it before on the face of the mall cop who'd grabbed her at 15, on the landlord who'd tried to evict her over a noise complaint she'd never made, on every authority figure who looked at her and saw a problem that needed solving instead of a person who deserved respect. Subscribe if you believe a child's birthday party should never feel like a crime scene. Keisha stepped beside Marissa, voice low. "You want me to talk to them?" "No." Marissa's jaw tightened. "I got the permit. I did everything right." "I know you did. So why are they here?" Keisha didn't answer. She didn't need to. Officer Brenner's boots crunched across the gravel, slow and measured, his hand resting casually on his belt. Not on his weapon, not yet, but close enough to remind everyone who held the power. He stopped 10 feet from the picnic table, looked at the banner, at the cake, at Jayla. Then his eyes locked on Marissa, and when he finally spoke, his voice carried the kind of certainty that didn't ask questions. It gave orders. Brenner didn't greet them, didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't offer the polite pretense of community policing that the Oakland PD website promised. He just stood there, thumbs hooked into his duty belt, scanning the party like a health inspector who'd already decided to shut the place down. Marissa's spine stiffened. She stepped forward, positioning herself between Brenner and the table where Jayla stood clutching her bunny. "Good morning, officer. Is there something we can help you with?" Her tone was careful, respectful. The kind of voice she hated, using the one that made her sound smaller than she was, softer than she felt. But she'd learned long ago that the wrong inflection could turn a conversation into a confrontation. Brenner's gaze slid over her like she'd barely spoken. "This your setup?" He gestured vaguely toward the decorations with 2 fingers, the motion dismissive. "Yes, sir. My daughter's birthday." Marissa forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We've got everything permitted, and—" "Uh-huh." He cut her off, already turning toward the picnic table. His boots thudded against the grass with a heaviness that felt intentional, like he wanted everyone to hear him coming. The other 2 officers fanned out, one toward the parked cars, the other lingering near the families, watching, not engaging, just present. A silent pressure that changed the air in the park. Uncle Derek muttered something under his breath. Julian's phone was fully out now, angled low but ready. Keisha whispered, "Rissa, this doesn't feel right." It didn't. Brenner circled the table slowly, eyeing the streamers, the neatly stacked plates, the untouched cake in its clear box. His expression didn't shift, not curious, not suspicious, just irritated. Like their very existence was an inconvenience he'd been sent to clean up. Subscribe if you've ever felt judged before you even opened your mouth. He stopped in front of the balloon arch Marissa had spent 2 hours assembling that morning, touched one of the ribbons, let it slip through his fingers like he was considering something. "How many people you expecting here?" His voice was flat, no warmth, no context for why he was asking. "Maybe 20, family and close friends." Marissa kept her hands visible, her posture open, non-threatening. Everything the internet told black mothers to do when police showed up uninvited. "It's just a small party, officer. We'll be done by 3. Brenner's jaw twitched. He glanced back at his partners, some unspoken communication passing between them. Then he turned back to Marissa, and for the first time, something resembling emotion crossed his face. Not concern. Not professionalism. Annoyance. "Yeah," he said, his voice laced with a certainty that made Marissa's stomach twist. "We'll see about that." He reached for the folding table. And Marissa knew, she just knew this wasn't going to end with a warning. Marissa's breath hitched. "Officer, please don't touch. Where's your permit?" Brenner didn't look at her when he asked. His hand hovered over the edge of the table, fingers drumming once against the plastic surface, like he was already bored with her answer. Marissa's heartbeat slammed against her ribs. She'd prepared for this. She'd known somewhere deep in the part of her that never stopped expecting the worst that someone might ask, might question, might decide that a black family gathering in a public park needed justification. So she'd done everything right. "I have it." Her voice came out steady, but her hands shook as she reached for her tote bag hanging on the back of a folding chair. "I submitted the application 3 weeks ago. Got approved last Tuesday." She pulled out the printed email confirmation, the permit number highlighted in yellow, the county clerk's digital signature visible at the bottom. She'd laminated it, brought 2 copies just in case. She held it out to Brenner. He didn't take it, didn't even glance at it, just kept staring at the table, at the balloons, at Jayla standing frozen near the cupcakes, her small fingers gripping the edge of the box like it might protect her from whatever was happening. "Officer." Marissa's voice gained an edge she didn't mean to let slip. "It's right here. Permit number A7734. Approved for Lake Merritt Park, Section C, May 18th, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Brenner finally looked at the paper in her hand. For half a second. Then his eyes cut back to hers, cold and flat. "This doesn't look right." Marissa blinked. "Excuse me? The permit doesn't look legit." Her stomach dropped. "What do you mean it doesn't look? It's from the Alameda County website. It has the clerk's signature, the confirmation number, everything." Brenner tilted his head slightly, the way someone might humor a child insisting the sky was green. "Ma'am, I've seen a lot of fake permits. This one's got all the signs." "It's not fake." Marissa's voice cracked, disbelief flooding her chest. "You can call the office right now, verify it. I'll give you the reference number." "Won't be necessary." "Then what?" "Step back from the table, please." The world tilted. Keisha's hand found Marissa's elbow, gripped tight. "Wait, hold on, she showed you the permit. She did everything she's supposed to." Brenner's gaze shifted to Keisha, and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. "Ma'am, I'm not going to ask twice." Uncle Derek stepped forward. "Man, this is a kid's party. You can't just—" "Sir, stay where you are." The second officer moved closer, hand drifting toward his belt, not drawing anything, just reminding everyone what he could draw if he wanted to. Jayla whimpered, and Brenner smiled. Not with joy, not with humor, with satisfaction, like he'd already won an argument no one else knew they were having. Brenner didn't wait for compliance. He grabbed the edge of the folding table and yanked it sideways. The stack of paper plates scattered across the grass. Plastic forks clattered onto the dirt. The carefully arranged napkins, purple and gold, Jayla's favorite colors, tumbled into the wind like confetti no one wanted. "Stop!" Marissa lunged forward, but Keisha pulled her back, fingers digging into her arm. "Don't touch him," Keisha hissed. "Rissa, don't give him a reason." Brenner moved to the balloon arch next. Didn't pop them. Didn't need to. Just shoved the PVC frame hard enough that it toppled sideways. The ribbons Marissa had spent 2 hours curling now dragging through the dirt. Jayla's breath hitched. A small, broken sound that cut through the chaos sharper than any shout. The female officer stepped toward the gift table, scanning the small pile of wrapped boxes like they were contraband. She didn't touch them. Didn't have to. Her presence alone felt like a violation. "This is insane," Julian said, phone raised now, recording. "You're destroying a child's birthday party." Brenner glanced at the camera. Didn't flinch. Didn't care. "Sir, I'm going to need you to put that away. I have every right to put it away." The second officer moved toward Julian, hand still resting on his belt. The unspoken threat hung heavy between them. Julian hesitated, looked at his wife, looked at Jayla, lowered the phone. But he didn't turn it off. Marissa's vision blurred. She couldn't tell if it was rage or tears, or the awful, crushing weight of watching her daughter's joy dismantled piece by piece in front of her. Brenner kicked the banner. Not hard, not violently, just enough to send it sliding off the table into the mud near the water's edge. The hand-painted letters, "Happy Birthday, Jayla," now smeared with dirt and grass stains. That's when Jayla broke. She lunged for the cake box, wrapping both arms around it like it was the last piece of her party worth saving. Her small body curled over the clear plastic, shoulders shaking, bunny tucked under one elbow. "Mama!" Her voice cracked. "Mama, they're ruining it!" Marissa's knees almost buckled. She wanted to scream, wanted to shove Brenner back, rip the badge off his chest, demand to know what kind of man destroyed a little girl's birthday party over a permit he hadn't even bothered to verify. But she couldn't, because she knew what happened to black women who fought back. So instead, she knelt beside Jayla, wrapping her arms around her daughter and the cake box, whispering things she didn't believe. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. We'll fix it." Jayla's tears soaked into Marissa's shoulder. And behind them, Brenner kept moving, kept dismantling, kept proving a point no one had asked him to make. The smell hit Marissa first. Wet grass, mud, the faint metallic tang of fear sweat on her own skin. And suddenly, she wasn't at Lake Merritt anymore. She was 15 again, standing outside the Westfield Mall in Prince George's County, Maryland, on a humid July afternoon that had started with laughter and ended with bruises no one believed existed. She'd been with her cousin Tamika. They'd bought pretzels, tried on sunglasses they couldn't afford, taken silly photos in the arcade photo booth, normal teenage summer stuff, until the security guard decided they'd been loitering too long. Marissa could still see his face, red, sweating, angry for reasons that had nothing to do with her, and everything to do with what he saw when he looked at her. A problem, a threat, something that needed removing. She'd asked why they had to leave, politely, carefully, the way her mother taught her. He'd grabbed her arm so hard she'd gasped. Tamika had screamed. People had stopped, watched, some recorded on their flip phones, the grainy videos that never made it anywhere that mattered. The guard had shoved Marissa toward the parking lot, her sneakers skidding on the pavement, her voice cracking as she tried to explain she hadn't done anything wrong. No one intervened. Not the white family walking past with shopping bags. Not the mall manager who came out, took one look, and asked the guard if he had it under control. Not the police officer who arrived 20 minutes later and took the guard's word over hers without asking a single clarifying question. Marissa had gone home with fingerprint bruises on her bicep and a lesson she'd never forget. Authority didn't need a reason. It just needed an excuse. And she would always be the excuse. "Rissa." Keisha's voice pulled her back. The mall vanished. Lake Merritt returned the overturned table, the trampled banner, Jayla's tear-streaked face pressed into her shoulder. 15 years had passed, and nothing had changed. "I hate this," Marissa whispered, so low only Keisha could hear. "I hate that she has to see this." Keisha's grip tightened on her arm. "I know. I did everything right. I got the permit. I followed the rules. I know, Rissa." "Then why is this happening again?" Keisha didn't answer, couldn't answer, because they both knew the truth. It didn't matter how many permits Marissa had. It didn't matter how polite she was, how prepared, how careful. Some people would always see her as something that didn't belong. Brenner's voice cut through her thoughts. "We're gonna need everyone to start packing up." Marissa's jaw clenched. Her hands, still wrapped around Jayla, began to shake, not with fear this time, with rage. The kind that had been simmering since she was 15. The kind she'd swallowed 1,000 times because letting it out meant consequences she couldn't afford. But watching her daughter cry over a birthday party being destroyed for no reason, that rage found a crack, and Marissa made a decision she'd regret and cherish in equal measure. She reached for her phone. Marissa's thumb hovered over the contact name for 3 full seconds. Torrance Caldwell, her older brother. The one who'd moved to Oakland 6 years ago without much explanation. The one who called every Sunday but never talked about his work, his past, or why he'd left Maryland so abruptly. The one she hated asking for help. Not because he wouldn't come, he always came, but because needing him felt like admitting she couldn't handle her own life. Like she was still the little sister who'd crawled into his room at midnight after the mall incident, bruises fresh, sobbing into his shoulder while he'd sat there silent and furious in a way that scared her. He'd promised her then that no one would touch her like that again. But promises didn't stop the world from being what it was. Jayla whimpered against her chest. The cake box trembled in the little girl's arms. Marissa pressed call. It rang once. Torrance picked up. Rissa. Not a question, just her name. Like he'd been expecting something. Her voice cracked before she could stop it. Tori, they're destroying Jayla's party. Silence on the other end. Not empty. Calculating. Who's they? Police. 3 of them. They said the permit's fake, but it's not. I have it right here. I printed it. I did everything. Her words tumbled out too fast, tripping over each other. The fear she'd been holding back, finally spilling through the cracks. Where are you? His voice didn't rise, didn't panic, just sharpened. Lake Merritt, Section C, near the... I know where that is. A pause. She heard movement on his end, keys jingling, a door closing. Are they touching you? Not yet. But they knocked over the table, kicked the banner into the mud. Jayla's crying and Her throat closed. Tori, I don't know what to do. Another beat of silence. Then, low and deliberate, stay where everyone can see you. Don't raise your voice. Don't touch any of them. Keep Jayla close. Okay. And Rissa? Yeah? I'll be there in 20 minutes. The line went dead. Marissa stared at her phone, confusion swirling beneath the fear. 20 minutes. He lived across town closer to Piedmont. Even with light traffic, that was a 35-minute drive minimum. How was he getting here in 20? And why did he sound so calm? Not surprised. Not outraged. Calm. Like this was something he'd prepared for. Keisha leaned close. Is he coming? Marissa nodded slowly, still staring at her phone. Yeah, he's coming. Good. Maybe he can talk sense into them. But Marissa wasn't sure talk was what Torrance had in mind. She'd heard that tone before, years ago, right before he'd disappeared for 3 days after the mall incident and come back different, quieter, colder. She'd never asked where he went, and he'd never told her. Brenner's boots crunched closer. Ma'am, I said, pack it up. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Marissa looked up at him, phone still clutched in her hand. And for the first time since the cruisers arrived, she didn't look away. My brother's on his way. Brenner's smirk widened. Good, he can help you load your car. Marissa slipped her phone back into her pocket, but her hand stayed there, pressed against the fabric like she could still feel the weight of her brother's voice. 20 minutes. She'd called Torrance in crisis before. When Jayla was born 2 months premature and the hospital bills swallowed her savings. When her landlord tried to evict her over a lease violation she'd never committed. When her car broke down on I-580 at midnight in the rain. Every time, he'd come. But never like this. Never with that kind of certainty. That controlled, almost surgical calm. Most brothers would have been angry, shouting, demanding to speak to the officers through the phone, telling her to record everything, to get names, to fight back. Torrance had done none of that. He'd just assessed, planned, moved. Like he'd been waiting for this exact call. Keisha studied her face. You okay? I don't know. Marissa watched Brenner circle back toward his cruiser, speaking into his radio. The other 2 officers stayed close, flanking the party like sentries. Something about Tori's voice was off. Off how? He wasn't surprised. Keisha frowned. What do you mean? I told him cops were destroying Jayla's party. He didn't ask why, didn't ask what happened, just where and when. Marissa's brow furrowed. Like he already knew something like this would happen eventually. Maybe he's just used to this stuff. You know how it is. But that wasn't it. Marissa knew her brother, knew the difference between his frustrated voice, his protective voice, his "I'll handle it" voice. This had been something else entirely. This had been his dangerous voice. The one he'd used exactly once before the week after the mall incident, when he'd knocked on her bedroom door at 2 a.m. and told her, "It's handled, don't ask me how." She never did. But the security guard who'd grabbed her, he'd been quietly transferred to a different county 3 days later. No explanation, no announcement. Just gone. Torrance had smiled at Sunday dinner that weekend like nothing happened. And Marissa had learned not to ask questions when her brother smiled like that. Uncle Derek edged closer, voice low. "Rissa, maybe we should just leave. Pack up what's left. This ain't worth—" "No." The word came out harder than she intended. Derek blinked. "What?" "I'm not leaving." Marissa looked down at Jayla, still clutching the cake box, still trembling. "She deserves her birthday. We did nothing wrong." "I know, but—" "Torrance is coming, we wait." Keisha and Derek exchanged a glance. They'd met Torrance exactly twice, once at Jayla's baby shower, once at Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Both times, he'd been polite, quiet, unremarkable. But there'd been something in the way he carried himself, shoulders loose, eyes always tracking, like a man who'd learned to read rooms before entering them. Marissa checked her phone. 18 minutes left. Brenner was still on his radio, nodding at something only he could hear. And somewhere across Oakland, Torrance Caldwell was driving toward a reckoning no one else saw coming. The murmurs started small. A couple near the water fountain, 2 joggers who'd stopped to watch, a man walking his dog, phone already out, filming from 20 yards away. Word spread the way it always did in Oakland, fast, quiet, and coded. Text messages, a few calls, someone's cousin who lived 2 blocks over. Within 10 minutes, the crowd around Section C had doubled. Not a mob, not aggressive, just witnesses. People who knew exactly what it looked like when power decided to flex for no reason other than it could. Uncle Derek's friend Eric arrived first. Tall, broad-shouldered, with graying locks tied back, and a voice that carried. He taught history at Oakland Tech, coached basketball, knew half the families in the area. And he was not the type to stay quiet. He walked straight past the police tape. One of the officers had started unrolling unnecessarily, theatrically, and stopped 3 feet from Brenner. "What's going on here?" Brenner turned slowly, sizing him up. "Sir, this is an active enforcement situation. Step back." "Enforcement of what? I see a birthday party. I see kids. I see families minding their business." Eric's tone stayed even, but his jaw was tight. "What law's being broken?" "They don't have a valid permit." "She showed you the permit." "It's fraudulent." Eric's eyebrows shot up. "You verified that? Call the county office? Run the number?" Brenner's expression hardened. "Sir, I'm not going to tell you again. I'm not doing anything but standing here asking questions. That illegal now?" The second officer stepped closer. "You need to move back." "Or what?" The air thickened. Marissa's pulse spiked. "Eric, don't—" But Eric wasn't looking at her. He was staring at Brenner, a man who'd spent 20 years teaching kids about civil rights and wasn't about to let this slide without saying something. "You know what this looks like, right?" Eric's voice dropped, quieter but sharper. "Tearing up a little girl's birthday party because you don't think she belongs here?" Brenner's hand drifted toward his belt. "Step back." Eric didn't move. And that's when the second officer shoved him. Not hard enough to knock him down, just hard enough to make a point, a palm to the chest, firm and deliberate, the kind of push designed to provoke a reaction. Eric stumbled half a step. The crowd gasped. Phones rose like a wave. "Did you see that?" someone shouted. "They're assaulting people now? Over a birthday party?" Keisha grabbed Marissa's arm. This is about to get bad. Julian was recording again, no longer bothering to hide it. Another parent joined him, then another. Brenner's radio crackled. A voice dispatch, maybe asked for a status update. He ignored it. His eyes swept the growing crowd, the phones, the witnesses. For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not fear, not regret. Calculation. He was deciding how far he could push this before it became a problem he couldn't control. Eric straightened, breathing hard but not moving. You just assaulted me in front of 30 people. You were interfering with police business. I was standing still. Brenner's jaw twitched. And Marissa realized something that made her stomach drop. He wasn't backing down. He was doubling down. The silver Accord pulled into the lot with no fanfare. No screeching tires. No revving engine. Just a quiet roll into the nearest parking space, as unremarkable as any other car arriving at the park on a Saturday afternoon. But Marissa felt the shift immediately. The way the air seemed to tighten. The way her lungs pulled in a deeper breath without her meaning to. Torrance stepped out. He didn't rush, didn't run, didn't shout her name or demand to know what was happening. He just walked. Steady, purposeful, eyes forward. He wore a plain gray Henley and jeans. No jewelry, no sunglasses, nothing that drew attention. But somehow, everyone noticed him anyway. Maybe it was the way he moved, shoulders loose but spine straight, like a man who'd been trained to enter hostile spaces without flinching. Maybe it was the way his gaze swept the scene in 2 seconds flat, cataloging every officer, every bystander, every angle. Or maybe it was just the way Brenner froze. It happened so fast Marissa almost missed it. Brenner had been mid-sentence, barking something at Eric about obstruction, when his eyes flicked toward the parking lot. And stopped. His mouth closed. His hand, still resting near his belt, twitched. His entire posture changed. Not aggressive anymore. Wary. Torrance crossed the grass without breaking stride, his eyes locked on Brenner like a sniper finding his target. He stopped 5 feet away. Didn't speak, didn't introduce himself. Just stood there. And Brenner stared back, his face draining of color so slowly it looked like time-lapse footage. Caldwell. The name came out barely louder than a whisper. Marissa blinked. Wait, he knows Tori? Torrance tilted his head slightly. Officer Brenner. His voice was flat, neutral, but underneath it was something cold and patient, like a blade waiting to be drawn. Brenner's throat worked. He glanced at his partners, then back at Torrance. What are you doing here? Family party. This is... Brenner stopped, swallowed, started again. This is official police business. Is it? Not a question. A statement. Brenner's jaw tightened. The second officer edged closer, confused by his partner's sudden hesitation. Brenner? You good? Brenner didn't answer. He was too busy staring at Torrance like he'd just seen a ghost he thought he'd buried years ago. The crowd sensed it too, the shift, the crack in Brenner's confidence. Phones stayed raised. Whispers rippled through the parents. Subscribe if you believe some people carry power you can't see until it's too late. Marissa stepped closer to her brother, voice low. Tori, how does he know you? Torrance didn't look at her, didn't blink, just kept his eyes on Brenner. We've met before. When? Long time ago. Brenner's radio crackled again. Dispatch requesting an update. He reached for it. Stopped. Looked at Torrance one more time. And for the first time since the cruisers arrived, Officer Brenner looked like a man who just realized he'd made a terrible mistake. Brenner's hand hovered over his radio for 3 full seconds before he lowered it. He didn't answer dispatch, didn't call for backup, didn't issue orders to his partners. He just stood there, staring at Torrance like a man trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. The female officer finally broke the silence. Brenner, what's going on? Nothing. The word came out too fast. Too tight. You know this guy? Brenner's jaw clenched. No. But his eyes said otherwise. Torrance hadn't moved, hadn't spoken again. He just stood there with his hands loose at his sides, watching Brenner the way a chess player watches an opponent, 3 moves from checkmate. Marissa's pulse hammered. She'd never seen her brother like this. Not angry, not tense, just present. Like he'd already won something no one else knew they were fighting over. Eric took a cautious step forward, reading the room. "Man, if you know each other, maybe you can straighten this out. Tell him we've got a legal permit. Tell him this is just a kid's birthday." "Stay out of this," Brenner snapped, his voice cracking slightly. Eric's eyebrows rose. So did several phones. The second officer looked between Brenner and Torrance, clearly confused. "You want us to clear the area or not?" Brenner didn't answer. Torrance finally spoke, his voice low and even. "You transferred here from Contra Costa County 2 years ago." It wasn't a question. Brenner flinched. Barely. Just a twitch at the corner of his mouth. But everyone saw it. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" Brenner's hand drifted back toward his belt. Not threatening. Defensive. Like a man looking for something to hold on to. "This has nothing to do with you, Caldwell." "She's my sister." Torrance nodded once toward Marissa. "So yeah, it does." The word sister landed like a stone in water, ripples spreading outward. Brenner's eyes flicked to Marissa, then to Jayla, still clutching the cake box, then back to Torrance. And something in his face shifted. Not anger. Fear. Quiet, controlled, but unmistakable. He took a step back. Just one. But the crowd noticed. The second officer noticed. And Marissa noticed. "Tori," she whispered. "What did you do?" Torrance didn't answer. His gaze stayed locked on Brenner, unblinking, patient. Waiting. Brenner's radio crackled again, louder this time. The voice on the other end sounded irritated. "Unit 4 to 7, respond. Status update required." Brenner reached for it slowly, like the device might bite him. Pressed the button. Opened his mouth. And that's when Torrance said the words that made Brenner's face go white. "You really want to do this here? In front of all these witnesses?" Brenner's thumb slipped off the radio button. The static cut out. And in the silence that followed, everyone watching knew one thing for certain. Whatever history existed between these two men, Brenner was on the losing side of it. Torrance didn't wait for Brenner to respond. He just started talking, calm, measured, like he was reciting facts from a case file he'd memorized years ago. August 2019. Contra Costa County Sheriff's Department. You were involved in an incident at a traffic stop near Pittsburgh. His voice carried across the park, not loud, but clear enough that everyone leaned in. Black family. Father, mother, 2 kids in the back seat. You pulled them over for a broken taillight that wasn't broken. Brenner's face drained of the last bit of color it had left. Things escalated. You pulled the father out of the car, slammed him against the hood in front of his children. His wife recorded it, filed a complaint. The crowd was dead silent now. Marissa's breath caught. She'd never heard this story. Never knew Torrance had any connection to law enforcement beyond the usual black man's reluctant familiarity with being stopped, questioned, watched. Complaint went nowhere. Torrance continued. Got buried. Administrative review cleared you. Wife dropped the case after someone suggested CPS might take an interest in her fitness as a parent. Keisha's hand flew to her mouth. Brenner's partner shifted uncomfortably. "Man, what is this?" Brenner didn't answer. Couldn't. Torrance took one step closer, still not aggressive, just closing distance. "What you didn't know," he said, voice dropping half an octave, "is that the father's brother worked federal. Contracts, office, nothing glamorous. But he had friends, people who owed him favors." Brenner's hands curled into fists. One of those friends was an investigator, Bureau of Internal Affairs. The kind that handles misconduct cases when local departments bury them. Torrance paused, letting the words settle. "I filed a sealed report, federal level, documented everything, the stop, the assault, the intimidation, the cover-up." Marissa's knees went weak. "Tori, you—" "It triggered a flag," Torrance said, still watching Brenner. "Automatic oversight. Any future interaction involving my name and any officer named in that report gets reviewed, automatically. No appeals, no exceptions. Brenner's jaw trembled. The second officer stepped back, piecing it together. Wait, you're saying he's flagged? Like federal flagged? Torrance didn't look away from Brenner. The second your dispatch ran this location and saw my sister's name on the permit, someone got a notification. Brenner's radio crackled. But this time, the voice wasn't dispatch. It was deeper, calmer, and it didn't ask for a status update. It gave an order. Officer Brenner, this is Federal Oversight Liaison Drummond. Stand by for instructions. Do not engage further. Do not leave the scene. Units are en route. The entire park held its breath. Brenner's hand dropped from his belt. And Torrance finally allowed himself the smallest, coldest smile. Told you, he said quietly. 20 minutes. The whispers started immediately. Did he just say federal? Brenner's flagged? What does that mean? It means he's been dirty before. Oh my God. The phones that had been documenting the destruction of Jayla's party now pivoted, zooming in on Brenner's face, capturing the exact moment a man in uniform realized his authority had evaporated. Eric crossed his arms, vindication flooding his features. So you've done this before, harassed families, abused your badge. Brenner said nothing. His eyes stayed locked on Torrance, like looking away might make everything worse. The female officer took a deliberate step back from her partner. Brenner, what the hell is he talking about? It's not, Brenner's voice cracked. He swallowed, started again. It's not what you think. Then what is it? The second officer's hand moved away from his belt, his posture shifting from backup to bystander. Because, if you're under federal review, I'm not. The radio just said. I know what it said. Brenner's control finally snapped. His voice rose, raw and defensive, and the crowd pulled back instinctively. But Torrance didn't move, didn't react. Just stood there, hands still loose, watching Brenner unravel. Marissa's mind spun. She'd spent years thinking her brother was just Torrance. Quiet, dependable, a little distant maybe, but always there when it mattered. She'd never imagined this. Never knew he'd been building something in the background, a safeguard, a tripwire designed to catch people like Brenner before they could destroy another family. She touched his arm. How long have you been carrying this? Torrance's eyes softened, just for a second, when he glanced at her. Since the day I saw your bruises from that mall cop. Her chest tightened. You were 15, crying, scared to tell Mom because you thought she wouldn't believe you. His voice stayed low, meant only for her. I swore I'd make sure you'd never feel that powerless again. Marissa's vision blurred. Keisha wiped her eyes, pretending she wasn't listening. Jayla peeked out from behind the cake box, her small voice cutting through the noise. Uncle T, are the bad guys leaving now? Torrance knelt beside her, his expression gentling. Yeah, baby girl, they're leaving. Are we gonna sing Happy Birthday? Absolutely. Brenner's radio crackled again. The federal voice returned, calm and procedural. Officer Brenner, you are ordered to cease all enforcement activity. Return to your vehicle. Await further instruction. Brenner's shoulders sagged. The second officer muttered something under his breath and walked toward the cruisers without waiting for permission. The female officer followed, shaking her head. Brenner stood alone now, isolated. The crowd's phones still trained on him like searchlights pinning down a fugitive. He looked at Torrance one last time. And Torrance stared back, expression unreadable. No triumph, no gloating. Just cold, patient finality. Brenner turned and walked toward his car. And the crowd exhaled as one. For the first time in 40 minutes, the air at Lake Merritt felt breathable. Torrance stood and turned to the scattered remains of the party. The overturned table, the mud-streaked banner, the balloons still clinging to the broken arch like survivors of a storm. He rolled up his sleeves. Let's fix this. Uncle Derek moved first, righting the folding table with a grunt. Julian grabbed the banner, brushing off the dirt. Keisha gathered the scattered plates and napkins, salvaging what she could. Eric clapped Torrance on the shoulder. "Man, I don't know what you just did, but that was something." Torrance didn't respond. Just picked up the balloon arch and started re-anchoring it in the grass. The other parents joined in. Strangers who'd come to witness now stayed to help. Someone's aunt produced an extra tablecloth from her car. A jogger donated a pack of wet wipes. Within minutes, the party began to take shape again. Not perfect, not the way Marissa had planned it. But together, Jayla set the cake box down carefully on the newly stabilized table, her tears drying on her cheeks. She looked up at her mother, uncertain. "Can we still do it, Mama?" Marissa knelt, brushing a stray curl from her daughter's forehead. "Yeah, baby, we can still do it. Even with the police here?" "They're leaving," Uncle T made sure. Jayla glanced at Torrance, who was tying ribbons back onto the arch, his face calm and focused. "Uncle T is really strong." Marissa smiled, though her throat tightened. "Yeah, he is." Keisha brought over the box of candles, 8 rainbow-striped ones that had somehow survived the chaos. She handed them to Marissa. "You want to do the honors?" Marissa opened the cake box. The vanilla raspberry masterpiece inside was miraculously intact, the frosting only slightly smudged on one corner. She pressed the candles into the top, one by one, while Jayla watched with widening eyes. "It's still pretty," Jayla whispered. "It's perfect," Marissa said, and meant it. Uncle Derek pulled out a lighter. "We doing this now, or what?" Marissa looked around. The parents had gathered close, forming a protective circle around the table. Phones were still out, but now they were recording something different. Not destruction. Restoration. Torrance stepped back, giving them space but staying close enough to watch. And Marissa realized something that made her chest ache. This was the party Jayla would remember, not the one that got destroyed. The one that got saved. "Light them," she said. Derek flicked the lighter. The candles ignited one by one, small flames dancing in the breeze. Jayla's face lit up, and the crowd began to sing. Soft at first, then louder. "Happy birthday to you." But halfway through the second line, Brenner's voice cut through the melody. "I'm not done here." The singing stopped. Everyone turned. Brenner stood 10 feet away, halfway to his cruiser, fists clenched at his sides. And his hand was reaching for Marissa. Marissa didn't have time to react. Brenner closed the distance in 4 long strides, his face twisted with something between rage and desperation. A man who'd been publicly humiliated and couldn't walk away without reclaiming some fragment of control. His fingers wrapped around Marissa's forearm. Not gently, not a tap or a gesture. A grip, hard enough to hurt. "You think this is over?" His voice shook. "You think bringing your brother with his federal contacts means you get to—" He didn't finish. Because Torrance moved. Fast, fluid, no hesitation. He was between them in less than a second, one hand closing over Brenner's wrist, not pulling, not striking, just holding with enough pressure that Brenner's grip on Marissa released instantly. "Take your hand off her." Torrance's voice was quiet. Deadly quiet. Brenner's eyes went wide. He tried to pull back, but Torrance held firm. "Now." Brenner yanked his arm free, stumbling backward. Every phone in the park was up now, recording. Capturing the moment Officer Brenner put his hands on a civilian while under federal oversight. The female officers sprinted over. "Brenner, what are you doing?" "She," Brenner pointed at Marissa, his hand shaking. "She started all this. She brought him here to—" "To what?" Torrance's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Stop you from violating her rights? From destroying her daughter's birthday party without cause?" Brenner's mouth opened, closed. No words came. Because he knew. Everyone knew. He'd just made it worse. Subscribe if you believe someone who abuses power deserves to lose it. Eric stepped forward, his phone angled perfectly. "You just assaulted her, in front of 30 witnesses, while on duty, while under federal review." "I didn't." "We all saw it." Julian's voice was steady, his recording still running. "Every single one of us." Brenner's breathing quickened. His eyes darted from face to face, looking for an ally, a way out, anything. He found nothing. The second officer walked away completely now, hands up, distancing himself. "I want no part of this." The female officer's jaw tightened. "Brenner, get in the car. Now." "I was just trying to get in the car." But Brenner didn't move, because his radio crackled one more time. And the voice that came through wasn't dispatch, wasn't local. It was the same federal liaison from before Drummond. And this time, his tone had shifted from procedural to final. "Officer Brenner, be advised, your actions in the last 60 seconds have been documented and transmitted. Physical contact with a civilian under active oversight constitutes grounds for immediate suspension pending investigation." Brenner's face went gray. "Federal Review Unit is 3 minutes out. Remain at the scene. Surrender your badge and sidearm upon arrival." The radio went silent. And so did the entire park. Brenner stood frozen, staring at his radio like it had just pronounced a death sentence. Because, in a way, it had. Marissa rubbed her forearm where his fingers had dug in, red marks already blooming on her brown skin. Torrance's hand hovered near her elbow, protective but not touching. "What just happened?" Keisha whispered. Torrance exhaled slowly. "The system worked." "What system?" He turned to face the crowd, addressing everyone now. His voice stayed level, factual, like a teacher explaining a lesson everyone needed to hear. "When I filed that report 4 years ago, it wasn't just paperwork. It created a permanent digital flag in the Federal Oversight Database. Any officer named in the complaint Brenner gets tagged. Any interaction involving my name, my family, or anyone connected to that original case triggers an automatic alert." Eric's eyes widened. "Automatic?" "Completely. No human has to approve it. The second Marissa's permit application went through the county system with her last name Caldwell, it cross-referenced. When dispatch logged this location and ran the officers assigned, the system saw Brenner's name." Julian lowered his phone slightly, stunned. "So someone's been watching this whole time?" "Not someone. Something. An algorithm designed to catch patterns of misconduct before they escalate." Torrance glanced at Brenner, who still hadn't moved. "But the second he touched my sister, it went from monitoring to intervention." The female officer finally understood. She looked at Brenner with something close to disgust. "You knew you were flagged and you still grabbed her?" Brenner said nothing, because there was nothing to say. He'd gambled that embarrassment and anger were worth the risk. And he'd lost. Marissa's voice came out quieter than she intended. "How does it know he touched me?" Torrance nodded toward the small device clipped to Brenner's vest. "Body cam. Uploads in real time during flagged interactions. His supervisor's been watching a live feed since we got here." Marissa's knees weakened. "You mean every word, every move, every second of him destroying your daughter's party?" Torrance's expression hardened. "All documented, all admissible." Keisha let out a breathless laugh. "Oh my God." Uncle Derek shook his head slowly. "Man built a trap and just waited for someone to step in it." "Not a trap," Torrance corrected quietly. "A safeguard. For people who can't fight back on their own." Brenner finally moved, took one shaky step toward his cruiser. "Officer Brenner," the federal voice returned through his radio. "Do not enter your vehicle. Remain visible, hands at your sides." He stopped, and in the distance, barely audible over the wind, came the sound of engines. Multiple engines. Heavy, fast, closing in. Marissa turned toward the park entrance. 3 black SUVs rounded the corner in formation. No lights, but moving with unmistakable purpose. Jayla tugged Torrance's sleeve. "Uncle T, who's that?" He knelt beside her one more time, his voice soft. "The people who make sure bad guys can't hurt anyone else." The SUVs parked in a line, blocking all 3 police cruisers. And the doors opened. 4 agents stepped out of the SUVs. Not in tactical gear, not with weapons drawn. Just dark suits, earpieces, and the kind of calm authority that didn't need to announce itself. The lead agent, a black woman in her 40s, with silver-streaked locks, pulled into a bun, walked directly toward Brenner. Her badge hung from a lanyard around her neck. Federal Bureau of Internal Affairs. She stopped 3 feet in front of him. Officer Nathan Brenner. Not a question. Confirmation. Brenner's jaw worked. Yes. I'm Special Agent Carmichael. You've been placed under administrative suspension, effective immediately. Badge and sidearm, please. The park went silent. Brenner didn't move. His hands stayed at his sides, trembling slightly. This is a mistake. I was responding to an unlawful... Your body cam footage has been reviewed in real time. Your radio transmissions have been recorded. Witness testimony is being documented as we speak. Carmichael's tone didn't rise, didn't need to. You have no procedural ground to stand on. Badge and sidearm, now. Brenner's face flushed red. He looked at his partners, both of whom had backed up 10 feet and refused to make eye contact. He looked at the crowd, at the phones still recording, at Torrance, who stood motionless, expression unreadable. Finally, his hands moved. Slow, shaking. He unclipped his badge from his belt and handed it to Carmichael. Then his sidearm. Ejected the magazine first, cleared the chamber, passed it over, grip first. The weight of it leaving his hand seemed to take something vital with it. Carmichael handed both items to another agent without looking. You'll be contacted within 72 hours regarding the investigative hearing. Until then, you are prohibited from any law enforcement activity. Do you understand? Brenner's voice came out hoarse. Yes. Do you require medical attention or legal counsel at this time? No. Then you're dismissed. Leave the scene. Brenner stood there for another 5 seconds, like his body hadn't caught up to the order. Then he turned. Walked toward his personal vehicle, a gray sedan parked near the edge of the lot. No one spoke. No one moved. They just watched. A man who'd arrived with a badge, and a weapon, and unearned confidence, now leaving with nothing but the weight of his own choices. The second officer muttered to his partner, "We should have left when he grabbed her." The female officer nodded. "Yeah, we should have." Agent Carmichael turned toward Marissa. Her expression softened, not by much, but enough. "Miss Caldwell?" Marissa stepped forward, heart pounding. "Yes? I apologize for what you and your family experienced today. This should never have happened." She glanced at Jayla, still holding the cake box. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Jayla blinked up at her, wide-eyed. Carmichael looked back at Torrance. And for the first time, she smiled. "Good to see you again, Caldwell." Torrance nodded once. "Agent. Still keeping an eye on things, I see. Someone has to." She handed him a card. "Call me if you need anything." Then she and her team returned to the SUVs, engines starting in unison. And just like that, they were gone. The SUVs disappeared around the bend, and for 10 full seconds, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the wind rustling through the trees and the distant lap of water against the Lake Merritt shoreline. Then someone exhaled, and the spell broke. Eric dropped onto a picnic bench, hands on his knees. Did that just happen? Julian replayed his footage, scrolling back through the last hour. "I got all of it, every second." "Send it to me," someone said. "Me too. Post it. People need to see this." But Marissa didn't hear them. She was staring at her brother, trying to reconcile the quiet man who fixed her sink last month with the person who'd just dismantled a cop's career with 6 sentences and a phone call he'd made 4 years ago. "Tori." He turned. "Why didn't you tell me?" He studied her face for a moment, then shrugged. "Would it have changed anything?" She stopped, thought about it. "I don't know. I didn't do it for credit, Rissa. I did it so the next time someone like Brenner tried to hurt you, there'd be consequences." He glanced at Jayla, who was smoothing out the wrinkles in the birthday banner. "So she wouldn't grow up thinking the world gets to treat her like that." Marissa's throat closed. Keisha wiped her eyes, not even pretending anymore. "Damn, Torrance." He looked uncomfortable suddenly, like the attention was too much. "It's just a system. I didn't invent it, just made sure it was there when it mattered." "Just a system," Uncle Derek repeated, shaking his head. "Man, you're something else." Torrance didn't respond, just walked back to the balloon arch and finished tying the last ribbon. The crowd began to disperse slowly. Some left, others lingered, helping clean up, righting chairs, picking up trash that had scattered during the confrontation. An older woman Marissa didn't recognize approached with a small gift bag. "For your daughter. I heard it was her birthday." Marissa blinked, surprised. "You don't have to." "I want to." The woman smiled. "She deserves something good today." Another parent brought over a pack of glow sticks. Someone else donated a Bluetooth speaker. Strangers becoming community. Witnesses becoming allies. Jayla tugged Marissa's hand. "Mama, can we sing now? For real this time?" Marissa looked around. At the reconstructed party, at the people who'd stayed, at her brother, standing quietly to the side, watching everything with those careful, calculating eyes. She nodded. "Yeah, baby, for real this time." Uncle Derek relit the candles. The crowd gathered close. And this time, when they sang, no one interrupted. No cruisers rolled up. No one grabbed her. No one told her she didn't belong. Just voices, rising together under the Oakland sky. And for the first time all day, Marissa let herself believe it might actually be okay. The singing ended with Jayla blowing out her candles, cheeks puffed, eyes squeezed shut in concentration. The crowd clapped, cheered, someone whistled. But even as Marissa cut the first slice of cake, she noticed the black SUVs hadn't left. They'd moved. Repositioned near the edge of the parking lot, engines off now, but still present, still watching. Two agents stood near the vehicles, speaking quietly into phones. A third walked the perimeter of Section C, taking photos of the scattered decorations, the overturned table that had been righted, the mud-streaked banner. Documenting everything. Agent Carmichael approached the cluster of parents who'd witnessed the entire incident. She carried a tablet and a calm, professional demeanor that somehow made people want to cooperate. "I know you've all had a long morning," she said, "but if any of you are willing to provide brief statements about what you observed, it would help ensure accountability." Eric stepped forward first. "I'll talk. I saw the whole thing." "Thank you." Julian raised his phone. "I've got video, 30 minutes worth." Carmichael's eyes sharpened with approval. "That's extremely helpful. Can you airdrop that to this device?" Within minutes, a line formed. Parents, joggers, the man with the dog who'd been filming from the fountain. All of them willing to go on record. All of them tired of watching injustice slide by unchallenged. Marissa watched, stunned. They're all staying. Torrance stood beside her, arms crossed. "People are tired, Rissa. They just needed to see that speaking up actually matters." "Does it? I mean, Brenner's suspended, but—" "He's done." Torrance's voice carried quiet certainty. "Federal review doesn't suspend officers lightly. They've got body cam footage of him destroying property, dismissing a valid permit, assaulting a witness, and grabbing you while under active oversight. That's not a suspension. That's a career ender." Keisha handed Jayla a slice of cake on a purple paper plate. "What happens to the other two officers?" "Depends." Torrance watched Agent Carmichael interview Eric. "If they reported Brenner's behavior, they might be fine. If they enabled it, covered for it, or ignored protocol," he shrugged, "they'll have their own problems." Subscribe if you believe every witness matters when fighting injustice. The second officer was talking to one of the agents now, his expression tight, hands gesturing as he explained something, probably distancing himself from Brenner's decisions. The female officer sat on the bumper of one of the cruisers, head in her hands. She'd known something was wrong, and she'd stayed quiet until it was too late. Marissa turned back to Jayla, who was eating cake with frosting smeared on her nose, giggling at something Amari said. For a moment, everything felt surreal. An hour ago, armed officers were destroying her daughter's party. Now, federal agents were building a case while Jayla ate birthday cake surrounded by people who'd chosen to care. Agent Carmichael finished with Eric, and walked back toward Marissa. "Miss Caldwell, I'll need a statement from you as well. Whenever you're ready." Marissa nodded. "Okay." "And Miss Caldwell?" "Yes?" Carmichael's expression softened. "Your daughter's party shouldn't have ended this way, but I'm glad it's ending with cake instead of tragedy." Marissa's eyes stung. "Me too." 3 weeks later, Marissa received an email. Subject: Case Resolution, Incident Number A77340PD. She opened it at her kitchen table while Jayla colored at the other end, humming the birthday song she still hadn't gotten tired of. The email was formal, clinical, but the words hit like thunder. "Officer Nathan Brenner has been terminated from the Oakland Police Department effective immediately. Federal review determined multiple violations of civil rights protocols, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming. Criminal charges are under consideration. The 2 additional officers present received formal reprimands and mandatory retraining. Your permit was valid, your complaint was justified. We apologize for the harm caused to you and your family." Marissa read it twice, then a third time. Then she closed her laptop and let out a breath she'd been holding for 21 days. Keisha called 10 minutes later. "Did you see?" "Yeah." "How do you feel?" Marissa looked at Jayla, who was drawing a picture of her birthday party balloons, cake, and a stick figure labeled Uncle T, standing between her and some scribbled blue shapes. "I feel like maybe things can actually change," Marissa said quietly. "Not everywhere, not all at once, but sometimes. Because of your brother. Because he refused to let what happened to me happen to someone else." Keisha was quiet for a moment. "You raising that little girl right, Rissa. She's gonna grow up knowing she deserves better." "I hope so." That evening, Torrance stopped by with takeout. He didn't mention Brenner, didn't ask if she'd seen the email. Just set the food on the counter and asked Jayla about her drawing. "That's you," she said, pointing at the stick figure. "You saved my birthday." Torrance crouched to her level. "Your mama saved your birthday. I just made sure the right people were paying attention. Mama says you're a superhero." He smiled. "Your mama's exaggerating." But Marissa wasn't. Because she finally understood what Torrance had been doing all these years. Not seeking revenge, not chasing justice for its own sake. Just quietly building systems that caught people when they fell, that held power accountable when it overstepped. That made sure little girls like Jayla didn't grow up thinking cruelty was something they had to accept. Later, after Jayla went to bed, Marissa and Torrance sat on the porch in silence. "Thank you," she said. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." She looked at him. "You've been protecting me since I was 15. I never knew how much." Torrance shrugged. "That's what family does." "Not everyone's family." "No," he agreed. "Not everyone's." They sat in the Oakland night, the city humming around them. Somewhere across town, Nathan Brenner was packing up his life, his career in ruins, his reputation shattered. And somewhere else, a federal database was still running. Still watching. Still waiting for the next officer who thought a badge made them untouchable. Because one phone call had proven something important. Sometimes, justice doesn't need a courtroom. It just needs a witness who refuses to forget.